100 women who've signed letters in support of Brett Kavanaugh, thank you for taking the time to listen to our personal testimonies. I first met Brett when we were both working in the early days of the Bush administration. All told, I worked closely with him for 4 years. No matter the hour or assignment, Brett was always the same: thoughtful, detailed, and wise beyond his years. And whether you were male or female, white or black, an intern or the chief of staff, Brett was also always the same: respectful, responsive, and available. His character was consistent. Simply put, Brett was a great colleague. But Brett also became a close friend. Our friendship was forged on 9/11, the fateful day when many of my colleagues and I hastily left the White House after being told by a Secret Service agent to run as fast as we could. Within seconds, I was in a sea of strangers walking up 17th Street, scared and alone, with nothing in my pocket. I looked up, and there was Brett Kavanaugh. My colleague took care of me that day. He made sure I was safe, had food and money, and also made sure I got home safely that evening. The days after 9/11 in the White House were long and stressful, but Brett took the time to follow up with me and ensure I was doing okay. For me, running into Brett Kavanaugh that day was a gift. Most of the women on this podium have known Brett for decades. Some studied side by side with him in school or worked with him as young lawyers in Washington, or like me, worked with him in an administration, and yet others clerked for him on the DC Court of Appeals. While we've all crossed paths with Brett at different points of our lives and through different circumstances, when the women on this podium speak, you will hear a consistent theme. Brett is a person of honor, integrity, and a person of strong moral character. He is a good husband, a good father, and a good friend. He's been a strong mentor to many of us and a fair boss. Women from every phase of Judge Kavanaugh's life, those who know him best, have stepped forward to say that the allegation being leveled against him is false, and we are proud to stand with Brett. Today you'll hear from 5 additional women who know Brett. Then I will be back here to help facilitate some questions and answers. Thank you, and now I'm going to turn it over to Megan McCaleb.
Thank you. My name is Megan McCaleb. I'm not here today to speak about Brett Kavanaugh's qualifications to sit on the Supreme Court. No one disputes those impressive qualifications. Instead, I'm here to tell you about the Brett Kavanaugh I have known for 38 years, a man who was in high school and is to this day a gentleman of the highest caliber who always treated women with decency and respect. The acts of which Brett is accused represent a stark departure from the behavior my friends and I have witnessed for more than 4 decades. More than 6 of us, the girls who were his closest friends in high school and hung out with him virtually every weekend, had no choice but to stand up and say, "That's not the Brett I know." He stood out as the most responsible guy who treated us with kindness and respect. Let me tell you more about the Brett Kavanaugh I know. The Brett Kavanaugh I know is a man of both the highest intellect and humility. Brett was a serious and accomplished student who never spoke about himself. He was always more interested in you, and he deflected comments about himself. That was true when he was in high school, and it remains true today. The Brett Kavanaugh I know is a man who played sports in his youth and who loved going to sporting events with friends. We all went to Redskins and Orioles games growing up. In addition to parties and dances, he stood out for friendship, character, and loyalty. The Brett Kavanaugh I know dated my sister and some of my closest friends during high school and college. all of whom said that he treated them with nothing but total respect and decency, to the point where he remains close friends with them today. The Brett Kavanaugh I know is a faithful and wonderful husband to his wife, Ashley, a great dad to his 2 daughters, and he's a fabulous son to Ed and Judge Martha Kavanaugh, with whom he is very close. The Brett Kavanaugh I know is a dedicated coach of young girls, not only in basketball, but in life lessons that come from playing team sports, winning with humility, losing with grace, determination, perseverance, grit. I know this because he coaches my niece, and his impact on her has been immeasurable. The Brett Kavanaugh I know regularly serves food to the homeless and tutors underprivileged children. The Brett Kavanaugh I know was there when one of my closest friends lost her husband to ALS. And he invited my friend's daughter to the father-daughter dance that first year and every year since. The Brett Kavanaugh I know was days away from his confirmation hearing when my father passed away. Brett skipped his preparation to attend my dad's funeral, went and prepared all afternoon for his hearing, and then asked if he could stop by my house that night to chat with my mom and my family. Those of us who know Brett best, now and back in high school, know he's a man of honor, integrity, and compassion. He has always been a good person and is a true friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. My name is Maura Fitzgerald. I've known Brett Kavanaugh since high school. I dated him briefly in college, and I have remained friends with him ever since. I want to make something clear, very, very clear. For me, this is not political. My being here has nothing to do with politics. I'm here because I felt it important to share my perspective on Brett's character and to talk about a man that I've known for over 35 years. The allegation against Brett is inconsistent with everything that I have known about him as a person. In both public and private, Brett treated me and everyone I know with respect. He has always been kind and good-natured. He has always been caring and concerned with the well-being of others. When I was in college and a close friend was in a coma after a car accident, Brett sent me a letter letting me know how sorry he was, writing that although he had never been in a similar situation, he could imagine the hurt that I was feeling. That was very typical of Brett, openly and unabashedly exhibiting care and compassion. And to my recollection, he was the only friend, male or female, who wrote a note to me after that terrible time. During the summers, my family would rent a beach house for a week with another family. It was a full house, but Brett was always welcome. He was polite and considerate to my siblings and to the parents. After his visits, he would express his thankfulness and appreciation to our parents. Brett was the kind of guy that you wanted to take home to meet your parents. Brett was then and still is a stand-up guy. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Martin. I've known Brett for more than 2 decades, both as a close personal friend and a White House colleague. Brett is one of the most decent, honorable, and good-hearted people I know. He is a man of high integrity and character. I have never seen him be anything but a true gentleman in all aspects of his life. I first met Brett in 1997 when we were young lawyers in D.C. We socialized in some of the same circles. He was single at the time and dated a couple good friends of mine, who to this day still count him as a very close friend. I later worked with Brett in the White House, where I saw him mentor young lawyers in the counsel's office and empower young White House staffers, many of whom were women. In the weeks and months after 9/11, when tensions often ran high, Brett had a natural ability to navigate choppy waters, to find consensus without ever losing his cool. He was the guy who stood up for the staffer who made the mistake and then quietly explained to him or her how to avoid the mistake the next time. As staff secretary, Brett often interacted with the most senior and sometimes the most junior staffers. He treated everyone with the same level of respect, decorum, and professionalism. Today, my husband Kevin and I count Brett and his wife Ashley among our closest family friends. We had our first children months apart, and we have shared the joys and challenges of parenting. We've celebrated our children's birthdays together and mourned the loss of family members. We've cheered for our kids' basketball and hockey teams. Brett taught my boys to play baseball with a plastic bat in his backyard. And when my daughter came along, he taught her that she could play baseball too. Brett is one of the best dads I know, present and available, a model for teaching what is right and good. Brett has the moral compass, integrity, and humility that I hope my 2 young sons grow up to have. I am here today because I know Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh is a good man who is incapable of mistreating anyone. I am here today because I stand with Brett.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Cox Kaplan. I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in Rising Star, Texas. That's just a few miles down the road from where Brett's wife, Ashley, my dear friend, grew up. My husband, Joel, and I have been friends with Brett and Ashley Kavanaugh from the early days of the George W. Bush administration and well before the 4 of us were married. For more than 15 years, we've shared life's victories and its heartaches, the highs and lows, everything from Brett's basketball team's wins and losses to the roller coaster roster of his beloved Washington Nationals. We've shared our kids' bicycle crashes, their skinned knees, their broken bones. We share our families. We spend birthdays and holidays together, and we have for years and years. There are no 2 people who are more humble, more honorable, more generous, or more gracious, and in Brett's case, more qualified to serve this country in the role for which he has been nominated. And while Brett is the person who's been nominated, his family is going through this process too. My dear friend Ashley and her precious girls, Margaret and Liza, who I love. I am heartbroken over the way that this precious family has been treated. What saddens me the most is the fact that I know this person, Brett Kavanaugh, to be a person of the highest moral character and integrity, someone who is humble, who puts others before himself, and someone who is beyond well qualified for the position of the U.S. Supreme Court. Brett is an extraordinary person, as you have heard all of us testify to, but he's also a real person. He's the one who's at neighborhood barbecues, and he likes sports, and he coaches basketball, as you've heard us talk about. He goes to church. He does all the things that we do, including working to set a good example for his children, his family, and his community. But honestly, he does those things better than most of us, with more dedication and more humility. This is the person that I know. This is the person who is an honorable husband and father and dedicated public servant. The nomination process should be one that weeds out those who are not qualified or suited to serve. Sadly, this process isn't. It seems anyone can launch an allegation without corroboration or evidence and dismantle a person's career and their life and the lives of their family members. This is wrong. I stand before you today as someone who spends much of my time working with women to help them succeed and build their careers. And I am so proud that Brett has worked to foster an environment in his office that empowers and supports young women lawyers as they embark on their careers. Maybe he does this because he's the father of 2 young daughters. But more likely, he does it because he knows it's the right thing to do. It would have been a lot easier not to come here today. This is not particularly fun. But it wouldn't have been right. And it wouldn't have been what Brett would have done. He sets a high bar as a friend and as an example for others. I have close friends on both sides of the political aisle. I happen to be a Republican, but that is not why I am here before you today. I'm here as the mother of 2 young children. They also believe in Brett Kavanaugh and love him. I am a patriotic American, and I'm here as the friend of someone who is highly deserving of the position for which he has been nominated. Our country simply cannot do better. Thank you.
I'm Jen Mascott. I served as a law clerk to Judge Kavanaugh from 2006 to 2007 during his first year on the bench. And from the time that I met Judge Kavanaugh more than 12 years ago, I've known him to be a person of the highest integrity and character. He's kind and generous, honorable and transparent. Throughout the 12 years that I've known the judge and his family, he's been a mentor and a friend. He's humble, he's fair, he serves his community, and routinely puts the interest of others ahead of himself. Judge Kavanaugh has had an impeccable record. Throughout the confirmation process, women and men from throughout his life and career have attested to his character, his integrity, and his service. Co-workers, students, academic colleagues, law clerks, and friends from across the political spectrum have attested to Judge Kavanaugh's credentials and character. The judge that I have known for 12 years is a dedicated public servant who faithfully applies the law in his work deciding cases and works toward the good of society in his time as a mentor, teacher, neighbor, and dad. During the year that I clerked for Judge Kavanaugh, he consistently applied the law in an even-handed and fair-minded way, with integrity. These allegations are inconsistent with everything I know about Judge Kavanaugh. I deeply respect and admire Judge and Mrs. Kavanaugh, and I'm thankful to have the judge as my mentor and as my friend.
Thank you all, and we'd be happy to take a few questions. Yes, ma'am. Well, I think, first of all, the Senate Judiciary Committee has invited her, and we all hope that she has a chance to be heard. But the reason that we know that this allegation is false is because we know Brett Kavanaugh. And we believe, and the reason that there are more than 75 women standing up here today is because we know the man, we know his heart, and we have known him over every aspect of his life, and the charge leveled against him is inconsistent with every single thing we know about him. So we stand here proud to support Brett and are confident that the things being just talked about are completely wrong. But you acknowledge you don't have the details of the allegations of the case. I'm standing here to talk about Brett Kavanaugh's character, and his character is of the highest integrity of anyone I've ever known or worked with, and I believe the women standing behind me feel the same way.
Sarah, you were at the Justice Department. Is it fair to expect an investigation? I mean, by the FBI, one was done with Anita Hill. I just wonder where you stand on that particular issue.
I was never at the Justice Department. I'm not an attorney. But the Senate Judiciary Committee has investigators. They are more than capable of handling this. They have been trying to handle it. They have bipartisan investigators, and I believe the Senate Judiciary Committee should do its work.
Sarah, I'm with CNN, Claire Warren. I just wanted to ask, so earlier today, President Donald Trump, made some statements casting doubt on the accusation, and specifically he said that if the attack on Dr. Ford was as bad as she says, charges
I would refer you to the White House to talk about the president's comments. What I can tell you is that Brett Kavanaugh is a person of high moral character, and we believe it is important for that story to be told, and that's why we're standing here today. And I also, by the way, we've got many women who've spoken here from other aspects of Brett's life, so I'd encourage you to, for those of you particularly interested in the high school years, to talk to the women with me.
For anyone who has spoken, when you say that accusations are inconsistent, do you believe that Dr. Ford is lying or confused about the identity?
I am not here to impugn her character or question her motives. I'm here simply to talk about Brett Kavanaugh and the person we know him to be, which is somebody who is of strong moral character and the kind of person we'd like to see sitting on the Supreme Court.
If the allegations were true, do you believe it would be disqualifying for someone to nominate?
The allegation isn't true, and Brett Kavanaugh is qualified to sit on the Supreme Court.
Was anyone there at this party in question, and does anyone know Professor Blunt?
I'm going to turn it to somebody in high school to answer that. Yeah.
From what I've heard, there are no details of the party. She doesn't know where the party was, when the party was, who was there. So it is hard to say if anyone was at this party. That said, I did know her when I was younger. Not well. She was friends of friends. And I never recall being at a party with her. She hung with a different crew than we hung with, and so I do not ever recall that.
All right, we got time for one more question. All right. Seeing no other questions, thank you all. Oh, sorry, you went one more. Final question. I'm not here to get into the political analysis of how this allegation came to be. I just want to stress one more time that Brett Kavanaugh is someone of the highest character. There's 75 plus women standing here today who've had life experiences with him across the spectrum of his life, and all feel strongly that he deserves to be confirmed and to sit on the Supreme Court. Thank you.